I will, let's see, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:01, but again, hopefully the rest of the group will be joining. I did not get, and let me just check my email one more time. I didn't get any notes from anybody saying that they wouldn't be attending. So let's just assume everybody's going to jump on. And with the first order of business being one that only requires first and second, like to ask for review and approval of the November 30th meeting minutes, which again I sent earlier. Apologies, there's a bunch of hyperlinks in there to all kinds of other things. Hi Brad, all kinds of other things in there which you can peruse at your discretion. But for approving the minutes, can I get a motion to approve those?
Can I ask to be included on your distribution list?
Yeah,
Because
of
that way
course.
because none of them are posted on the website, so I've not seen any of them.
Oh,
I'd be interested to follow.
yeah, they have their own folder in our cloud share. So we
Oh,
have
yeah.
in the same place we have our agenda and all of that. I know it's duplicative to a lot of the stuff that you post, but when I've been reading the open meeting laws and things like that, I see that there's certainly no harm in having more than one of some or the same thing in multiple places. So Valerie, I'll send you the link to the cloud share with a little like
Oh, that'd be
snapshot
perfect.
of what is
Terrific.
in each of those folders.
Oh, great.
Everything, there's nothing that we don't keep in there, going back all the way to the work that Jessica and the ad hoc committee did a few years ago. All of that material is in there as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for everything.
Is it
But
accessible to the public?
it is. Oh yes, of course.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, we don't, yeah, we
Yeah. Okay.
yes, that
Good to know.
is, yeah, it's not a private share or anything like that. So can I get a motion to approve last month's minutes?
I
The
move to
minutes
approve last
from-
month.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, terrific. I can note that, make sure I'm doing this in the right place. Approved. Thank you. Okay, so as always, we start off with public forum, just in case there's any members of the public who want to bring anything before the committee and don't want to sit through the rest of the agenda. So is there anything that from the public that wants or needs to be addressed at this time by our committee? Okay, noted. Nothing for public forum. So tonight we have a couple of big things and a couple small things. We're going to start off with probably the two biggest things and lead with really the biggest thing, and that is what I've called the sidewalk audit, but really what it is putting the results of the sidewalk audit into action. So as I mentioned on the last month's call, there had been an extremely comprehensive audit done of the village's sidewalks, the conditions, lengths, dimensions, and all kinds of things like that, which was submitted to the town. It's awesome that she's joining us tonight. Valerie is kind of the prime mover in how that material is going to be carried forward. It's going to inform a lot of both what ends up being short-term and long-term planning for sidewalk improvements, repairs, contracting, and things like that. So with all that said, Valerie, I'd love to turn it over to you. Everybody has links to all the material, but I can pull up anything you want if you want it to be shared on the big screen here. But we give you the floor and let us know how we can help you in this first wave of using the sidewalk audit results.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will share my screen very briefly to put the current sidewalk inventory, or at least the original one. Can you see that on the screen? Okay, good. This is what I've been working with, and a lot of it's been done. The most recent one was East Street on the north side, the whole length of it, the whole length that needed to be done on that side. And and I noticed that there are some streets on here, or that are some streets that are not on here that I think should be on here. And that's one of the things that precipitated the inventory, the survey work from the Regional Planning Commission was because I wanted to get a bigger picture of what the needs are and what the priorities are. Because as you can see from the lengths, you know, they're bite-sized pieces that we can manage in a single year and within the budget. And you never really know until you put it out to bid what the prices are going to be. So you have some sense of the scale of the kinds of things we're trying to accomplish every year. And so I'm looking for guidance. Since you, as a group, you are motivated and knowledgeable and interested in all things sidewalks and pedestrians and bicycles, I really value your perspective on how to improve this list of priorities. And we might not have time this year to do that, but going forward, kind of a work plan going forward and on how we can schedule upcoming sidewalk replacements. I think for this time, and I noticed that, well, let me get my thought here. The next one on the list is Garfield Street, and it is in rough shape. There's no doubt about it. I was walking around on it very recently, and definitely needs work. But yet I was interested to see that the Regional Planning Commission inventory didn't rank it that high. I was really surprised. So there's that kind of judgmental interpretation, I suppose. You all have lived experience every single day in the village. You know what sidewalks are top of the list and or should be that maybe are not on this list. And so I'm looking for that kind of feedback, that kind of experience to help improve this list. So in the meantime, given the short time we have the window now to get something out teed up for the spring, I think I will go ahead and go for Garfield Street. But I noticed, for example, another street that did rank very highly in need of repair is the west side of North Street, which is not on this list. And also sections of Pleasant Street are not on this list that I think really should be. So, and you might have your own observations. And I was surprised that Spring Street didn't rank as high on the Regional Planning Commission list, because I think it's in pretty rough shape and it's traveled by school kids all the time. So that's the kind of feedback I'm interested in getting from you when you can do it, when it works and how it fits into your work plan. But that would be a very, very useful effort.
So thank you for the context. Everyone, I hope everyone has questions. I have a couple for Valerie, but I'll save them till everybody else goes. Does anybody have questions for Valerie before we kind of make moves to jump in with this? Because I had two questions coming in, but you said some really interesting things relative to what the regional planning came up with relative to what we now have, which is a very comprehensive inventory of a lot of all those same streets that you mentioned. So who wants to go first with questions for Valerie?
I just had a question about the planning tool that they used. If we could see a copy of whatever matrix that they used in order to come up with that ranking. Just because I think that we might have like a sort of gut feeling about, you know, certain sidewalks that people use a lot or something like that. But I think it would be helpful to also know what they're using when they're making their decisions.
Valerie, if I remember correctly, it was in the however many months since they finished the audit, it's been tough getting this documentation back from them after they initially presented it to us. We finally got this map from them, which we saw, I don't know, Valerie, 6 months ago or something like that.
It was a while.
On that Zoom call, it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
And she was she was zooming in from Switzerland or something like that.
Yeah. So what I'll do, and Valerie, I don't know if you have any of this formally, but Jessica, I'm going to look back through the email chains that I have from all that conversation, and there was documentation on the criteria they were using, everything from cracks to above and below grade things of that nature that they were using to feed into this. Oh, here we go.
So this is an Excel document with multiple tabs, and it's pretty large. So the let's see. So the the items here on the left-hand column were items that they observed, and they ranked from 0 to 5. And let's see, I'm gonna bear with me. I don't want to make anybody seasick. But they summarized a lot of information in this document and some summary tables. I haven't made the time to go through them. And then I'm not sure how to switch screens without screwing up. So I'm going to stop this share and share a different one. Because I have 2 different screens going on, and so sometimes they don't respond as I intend. So here's the other view of the actual online map. And there's a link in the email from earlier to get to this map. And here it shows the color rankings and how it's distributed. I'm a very visual person, and so this kind of presentation is very useful to me. And let's see, this is Garfield Street, which they did score as poor. So I think this side of the street would probably be next in line. This side of North Street was not on the original list at all. Church Street is. We did East Street last time, so they got that. That's all good. And I was surprised that they didn't get more of Pleasant Street. They got a little bit, but there are some stretches that I thought were really pretty not good. So they did a pretty good job. And one of the other things I really appreciate about it is the photographs that they included, because that's something that I strive to do. When I put the RFP together to put it out to bid, I put a package of photographs attached to that so that the bidders can have some visual idea of what they're getting into, because some bidders aren't local and they might not have the time to let's see if I can click on one of these photos. How does that work? Okay, there it is. So yeah, they took photos of these segments, which I had been doing. As I go around, I would have a collection of my own photos that I would use, but now I can use theirs. So I like to put the photos into those RFPs so that the bidders have a clearer sense of what they're bidding on.
That's really helpful. I mean, it looks like they're looking at the physical condition of the sidewalk. And so maybe some of the work that we could do as far as how it's being used and, the priority, like, is it something that's being used a lot or something that's not? That might be extra information that isn't already in there.
Well, it occurred to me as I was later this afternoon that different people did different segments of the survey. And I wonder if, as they gain more experience with it, that some of their perceptions might have changed, some of their valuations might have changed, so that segments that they started off with, they might have ranked differently had they had more experience with the system. So maybe that explains why some segments don't show up as orange or red as I would have expected them to be. So there's all that kind of interpretation that goes into this kind of project, but it's still very useful as it is. One thing I don't know the answer to is how we would update it. So as segments get completed, we would want to show that. So that's a question I would have for Madison at the Regional Planning Commission.
Sally, hi. Thanks for joining us. I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was one of the people doing the survey.
Oh, wonderful.
So I thought maybe I could shed some light on it, but you guys have covered it kind of. As far as going along, it was very specific about when you put a green or a blue or whatever. It was like how tall is the bump between the next thing, the ridge, how wide are the cracks, how much of a section of a one paver had cracks on it, so we were looking at really specific things like 25% or is it a quarter or is it
Well, that's helpful. Wow. it must have taken a long time.
It took a long time.
It must have. Oh my God. And just looking at this map, just how much ground literally was covered.
Yeah.
Wow.
Usually 2 people did it, so one would, and we'd get on each side, so we're looking at a section of 4, so we wouldn't, lose our place. And
Wow.
and then we'd just confirm with each other, would you say that's a 1/4 inch? Yes, 1/4 inch. Okay, and the other person would write it down. It was quite organized.
Well, that's good to know. Very good to know.
Sally, thank you for the firsthand, the primary source commentary. That's invaluable for all of us. Valerie, historically, when you've done this every year, every other year that you've put these things out to bid,
Mhm.
have you had any North Stars you've used for picking these things besides, say, if a sidewalk is absolutely falling apart? I know Jessica had mentioned sections of sidewalk that get a lot of use simply because of where they're located and things like that. What have you typically or historically done as far as picking and choosing
The
which
list,
sections get done?
that,
Okay,
that list.
got it.
And so when I observed that certain segments weren't even on it, just made me concerned. And that some things had gotten repaired, like some parts of sidewalk on Park Place did get repaired. But I don't know how those repaired sections relate to the segment that's still shown on the list. Because I have not gone out and necessarily ground truthed those particular segments. So I just haven't had the capacity to do that. So that's where I thought the committee might have some insights to be able to refine some of this stuff.
Got it. One of the things that we're going to be getting into in other business later, I didn't put it on, I apologize, Jessica, for not putting it on formally onto the agenda, but understanding that the select board is in the middle of budgeting right now. What is your timeline for when you'd like to have feedback from us?
When would the select board like feedback?
Yeah, just that would help inform your
Right.
process, knowing that it's probably in some way, shape, or form going to be tied into a dollar amount that you're going to be asking possibly.
Right. Well, we're starting the budget review on January 8th. I don't know how far we're going to get. Special meeting the following week, and then another meeting after that. They have to wrap everything up by January 29th. That's the drop dead to finalize everything for the town report and for the warning. And we have to post the warning that week. So, and part of that discussion will be capital planning, sidewalks, roads, that whole bit. So probably either January 15th or the 22nd will be those topics.
Okay, so the sooner the better for all intents
Sure,
and purposes.
absolutely.
With that in real terms, meaning like in a week or so, basically, if you're going to start this discussion, that's
And you
shortly.
probably already know that for years, the select board has budgeted regularly $35,000 into the sidewalk reserve fund. Sometimes they'll throw in some additional funding from the undesignated fund balance, or just just because they feel it's a priority. But it's going to be a challenging budget year. So I think everything's on the table. And because we have missed a few years, and I don't know what the balance is right now of that fund. I think it's pretty healthy. So whether they will choose to skip a year of funding for it, I don't know. But given other things on the plate, it's on the table.
Okay, that was going to be my question with Ian not on the call this month. I would ask you to educate us on things like carryover budget balances and things like that, and what things do carry over versus what things get rolled in or wiped out.
The town has a number of reserve funds, and they carry over from year to year to year, which is part of their purpose. At the end of the year, whatever is not spent from the funds that were raised through the approved budget is what's called the undesignated fund balance. And we don't always have a clear idea of what that is at the end of each year or at the beginning of the next budget season, because it's been, the audit process has been very, very, very slow. We have a somewhat new auditor. Last year was their first year working with Bristol, after working with a different auditor for many, many, many years. And so, and then we also had a new treasurer at the time. So there was a lot of delay. And I'm discovering now, as I'm in the thick of the budget process, that there were a lot of deficiencies in the audit document that we did receive, things that were not included that we ordinarily would have expected. So anyway, we're all still trying to get a handle on stuff like that.
Got it. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions related to the sidewalk inventory for Valerie or Sally?
So if I can ask this question, since Garfield Street was the next on the current list, and it is shown here on the map, is the committee okay with proceeding with that segment this coming year?
I think, yeah, I think based on, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got five members here, so I do believe we could put this to a vote, an actual quorum vote. We're trying, Valerie, just as an aside, we're doing obviously everything we can to make sure we're staying, anything that the group does follows all the conventions and rules that the open meeting laws and all of the
But the
things
open
that
meeting law does not require Robert's Rules of Order. You can function by consensus if you choose to.
Well, true. This is true. We haven't even had, well, I've said on too many of these calls,
Sure.
what the quorum issues that we've run into. Is everyone okay with Garfield based on, and again, check the email that I sent you previously. It's got links to the meeting minutes, which has a link to the map that Valerie shared. You can scroll around and go right to Garfield Street. It is definitely, as you zoom in, it is one of the hot spots, especially if you look at the overall length of Garfield Street being a relatively short street. There's one side of it that's got as much red and orange on it as it has any other color. Would anybody have any problems with Garfield being the recommendation, at least for the next wave of repairs?
I'm all for it.
I think that it would be fine. I mean, it definitely needs to be repaired. I guess the only question I would have is just if Spring Street, how Spring Street is holding up, because we only have sidewalks on the one side and it's so heavily used. So I don't know if the condition is worse, but it definitely gets a lot more traffic and is like a really important connector. So that's the only thing I would bring up. But I don't know if its condition warrants moving it in front of Garfield.
When you check on the map, it's interesting. The photos that they took tell of what to me looks like a slightly different story than the ratings that are there. There's a lot of big cracked pieces. There's a lot of out of grade or kind of out of level pieces on Spring as well. But you have to click on the photos to see that story, because the actual ratings, the color coding ratings wouldn't seem to indicate, oh, okay, Spring Street's an issue. The documentation though seems to tell a different story.
And interestingly, in wintertime, Spring Street collects a lot of ice because the sidewalk is lower and it's bermed on each side by lawn. And so the snow and ice has no place to go but build up on the sidewalk, which is obviously quite hazardous, and kids have to walk in the road. I don't know about that situation on Garfield Street. And there are similar conditions like that elsewhere. Seasonally, it's a very hazardous situation. But this, unfortunately, with the winters going the way they are, I don't think we're going to have that problem this year.
When they do these repairs, and obviously we've seen them do all these, do you typically find that the grade, that the height of the sidewalk actually goes up when they redo them correctly? Yes,
that's one of the objectives, or maybe a combination of elevating the sidewalk and shaving back the sides of the lawn.
Got it.
Yeah, to allow the water to drain off.
Got it.
And to adjust the pitch appropriately.
Yep. I think there's no issue with Garfield, and Spring Street definitely looks like something that it feels like the photo documentation would support, if not putting it in front of the group this year, certainly it being in second place and then first place for next year. Or the year after, rather, that it does feel like it should be considered along with any other street that, as we all know, like what a cracked sidewalk tile looks like, so.
And I'm surprised that on the existing list, the old list, that Church Street isn't higher up on it. When you look at the map, it's screaming red. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
I
you can
think
see
one
my
thing is-
conundrum.
I think one thing is that there are different people were going around, there were pairs that were going around, and maybe when there was an overall something,
Mhm.
people just had a different frame of reference for
Right.
putting a color. I'm not really sure if that's true or not, but
That's plausible. Well, I appreciate your time, and I'll be
We-
interested to hear more about your thoughts.
Well, we appreciate.
When you get to it.
We appreciate you coming on. I would assume, I don't see Neat as a member on this anymore. If you leave, is that gonna leave the call? Because I didn't sign on through the town account tonight, because I knew you were gonna be here.
Ah, okay. No, I can leave it on.
Okay, cool. Then we'll shut it all down when everything's done afterwards.
Okay.
If you
I'll check
don't
in.
want to, we won't hold it against you if you don't want to hang around.
No,
for the rest
yeah,
of the
I've got other things happening.
But I will, after the meeting, I'll send you the link to the cloud share. If you could please send that spreadsheet that you have, we'll put that in the folder with all the rest of the sidewalk inventory information that we have.
Yep, will do.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you, and I will sign off.
You're welcome. Okay, any further discussion? Like I said, all the inventory information is in there's a link in the meeting minutes. I'll throw that spreadsheet in as soon as she sends it to us. I think I'll have to check the meeting minutes to see if I sent a separate link to the folder that all the sidewalk inventory and audit information was in. I know I included a hyperlink to that map thing. But I'll double check that after the call. Okay, so meeting agenda number 4. We've been operating for.
Chris, I just had a quick question.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. That's okay. It's just, it seems like it isn't a super urgent task because they already are just going to put in a certain amount of money for the sidewalks. So it sounds like as long as we're able to like do whatever auditing or updating that we want to do before next January, we would be good. Is that your sense too?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I think that's an interesting point, given the nature of how they've funded these things in the past, and that there's this expectation that, and Valerie has told us this previously. Every year she has to do this. Every year she tries to fix a chunk of the broken sidewalks. The big thing is having an objective process that allows her to pick which sidewalks to do. So I think you're right. That's a good read on this, that there's not so much an urgency, because a sidewalk is going to get fixed in Bristol, as it were, whether anybody likes it or not. What I would encourage everybody to do, though, is click through all those photos on those streets, especially ones where from your own use of those streets that the color markings don't necessarily align with what you've seen, because I think some of what Sally has been saying about how different people, even at different times, a person's view on the rankings might have changed. I think that's important to note, and it might be something that we can go back in and say, okay, look, objectively, if a section of sidewalk 3.5 by 3.5 or whatever is cracked, then that's a 4 or 5. There will be no debate over that like somebody might have been historically waiting for a 5 to be something that was both cracked and crooked or something like that. If a piece of sidewalk has to get replaced, that's a 4 or 5. And so I wonder if we'll be able to go in. I'll send a note, because there is an email thread about this. I'll send a note and see if there's a way that some of those those numerical and color gradings can be altered so that the map becomes a little bit more functional. So that we go through it, everybody goes through it and says, hey, that is a hot spot. We should go back. Here's the photos prove it. We've got this tool now. It's a non-objective tool. We just need to go in and clean out some of the totally understandable subjectivity that's kind of like an artifact of the process. Sally.
I think it is worth going to some spots and not just going with the photos too, because and walking on it and just feeling, sometimes a piece can be cracked, but it's still really flat and it's fitting in fine and it's like no problem.
Yep.
And another one is lifted up and it's tripping people.
Yep.
And another one is collecting water, but it's still flat. So you really have to look at these and figure out, look at different seasons, find out which is really causing trouble. And
Yep.
it's going to be different with different people, whether someone gets bothered by a trip or a slant and ice, or, is there a wheelchair going over it, or is there a foot going over it? It's tricky to kind of figure that all out.
Yeah.
And it
I
helps
know-
to be there in person and just kind of feel it out,
It's a good point. I was just walking Church Street 2 days ago, and the sidewalk, the concrete of the sidewalk itself is perfectly flat. It's not cracked, but the concrete in front of the section where the church is on Church Street is completely eroded. It's down to the stones in the cement mix, in the concrete mix. And I could see that being a subjective call, because by the grade, it's perfectly flat and there's no cracks. But you couldn't, as an example, like to pick on roller skaters, of which there's very few, you couldn't roller skate down that section of sidewalk because it'd be like roller skating on stones for all intents and purposes. So yeah, going to see these places is probably definitely a part of this if we want to change some of the rankings so that the process is better informed.
Ideally, we make the roads more safe to roller skate on too, by
Well,
slowing down the traffic.
that
Whatever.
will
I'll
get
step back with that.
no. That is our raison d'etre here for all intents and purposes, to make
I'm glad
roads
I showed
safer,
up to hear that.
to make the roads
Thank you.
safer for roller skaters. Like that is if the roads are safe for roller skaters, they're safe for everybody. So that might be our new
That's what I mean.
our new guidepost. So
Can I jump in very quickly with two different things?
yes.
A little bit out of order, consider it under other business perhaps, but also related to what Sally just said about roads. Two things I want to let you know about. Chris already is aware, I think, of one, of an exchange I had with a property owner on West Street, which turned out to be kind of funny. That it's been on my radar for quite a long time to have scoping studies done of a new sidewalk alignment along the post office side of West Street, because it's so zigzaggy and there are some really chunky sections there too. And of course, where it ends it's someone's lawn just before the creamy stand, and there's a crosswalk to nowhere. And so I was hoping a scoping study would figure out how best to install a new alignment of sidewalk across that property to make a straight connection and that kind of thing. And turns out, long story short, the property owner of that property owner contacted me and asked me, asked a question about the future sidewalk on West Street, sidewalk improvements. And I shared that perspective of mine and my goal there. And I didn't know I was talking to the property owner. So it turns out that the property owner is extremely supportive of doing that, because I was concerned that the property owner would be very reluctant and hesitant and concerned about a new sidewalk going right across their front yard. But no, the property owner actually wants one. So that's great news. So that's a quick update on that. I don't know when that's going to happen, when the scoping study will happen. It'll depend on the next grant round that we can fit into. But the other thing I wanted to mention quickly, Pine Street. It's good news. I think you'll find I haven't actually looked at it yet, but yesterday I received a map of Pine Street that our town engineer prepared with one or more of his colleagues, trying to evaluating the width and elevations of Pine Street and coming up with a scheme to widen it to allow for a pedestrian lane, a striped pedestrian lane, and also deal with drainage. And it's a dual purpose initiative to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists by having a striped lane, but widening the surface area enough, and also installing some drainage structures, catch basin kind of things. And we want to try to dovetail this with the repaving of Pine Street coming up, because that's going to be, or we hope it's going to be completely ground down. So we'll be able to really install some new improvements at that time. I don't know exactly what they're going to be. The select board hasn't seen it yet. Hopefully we'll have some capacity in January, might not be till February, to actually look at the plan and evaluate its whether it can be done. And what the impacts are going to be on individual properties along the way, because I don't know. I imagine some people are going to lose some front yard. But anyway, I just wanted to give you an update that our engineer and others did look into it, and some folks think it's doable. So at some point, we want your eyes on it too, and it'll go before the select board sometime, probably in probably not January, but maybe February.
The first meeting in maybe 10 meetings that I pulled Pine Street off the agenda as a formal agenda item, and there's actual news about it. So that's amazing.
Well, I knew you'd be interested.
Well, yeah, I had a couple outstanding action items from our last meeting on the Pine Street thing that I needed to follow up on, and I didn't. So I took it off because I didn't even want to, since I didn't even have anything to speak to it on, I didn't want to say what I always say about Pine Street for another meeting. So this is awesome. This is substantive stuff. We look forward to helping out with that. We've got the material ready to go for the assisted lanes. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That plan is ready. That was our whole thing that I had to get a little bit more information on. Our plan was to resubmit the select board's original idea, which they chartered the group with, for advisory lanes for Pine Street. We thought, like, that's actually probably going to be a better thing to do than the stop sign thing, which they had asked us to put in front. So it's great to hear that there might actually be additional room to play with on that.
Right. Yeah, I think I haven't even unrolled it yet, but I think they mentioned 2 feet on each side, widening it, but it might mean that the center line shifts. So their alignments might change, but they're creating some extra space, extra surface area.
Wow, the road will almost be legally a 2-lane road at
So
that
a 4-foot lane, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you for that. That's huge.
All right. Signing off.
Okay, that's actually tremendous news. So agenda item number 4, for the last 3 meetings at least, we've been operating without a secretary. Our secretary left the group, moved to New Haven, so could no longer be in the group, and as a result, we lost our secretary. So I've been doing the secretarial duties of the group, just simply because we didn't take time to assign a new secretary, given, as Tanya can attest, given the lower turnout from summer into fall in the meetings. We actually didn't even have enough people to really broach the subject on. I want to come out of tonight with a new secretary. So I'm asking the group, would anybody like to volunteer for that role? Effectively, all it really entails, and this is something that very much comes under Vermont open meetings laws, is all you have to do is basically take the agenda, jot down any relevant things that happen underneath each agenda item. Go back. What I've been doing is taking that and then going back and watching the recording of the call. They record these and put them on YouTube after the meetings are over. I just check the notes against check the notes against the actual record, make any adjustments, and it's saved to the share for people to see. And that's what we've been approving at the beginnings of all these meetings. So the lift is relatively light. Basically, jot some notes down. You can be as deep or as as kind of bullet pointy or surface level as you feel any of the subjects deserve. The big thing is that it gets done. That is probably the most important thing, is that we are keeping minutes. They are accurate minutes. Whatever we do choose to put down in those minutes is accurate. So I'll just leave it at that, since I'm not going to be overbearing and say this needs to be a transcription. Meeting minutes are not a transcription of the happenings. They're, this is what was discussed. Here's some action steps, whatever. It's really in that spirit versus a transcription. Do I have a volunteer for a hand raiser for the secretary? And just do everything you can not to volunteer for this, because I know what your volunteering load is already. Do we have a volunteer? Super easy. There's probably AI that could do this for you at this point. In fact, I know there is. Like there's a button that the town can switch to actually do a transcript of these calls via Zoom. And I could ask Valerie to do that. But then the transcription is going to be a whole lot of me talking, and that's absolutely not what we want in the meeting minutes. I'm gonna just stare all of you until somebody.
This is a real a real war of attrition here between all of us on who's gonna take the bait, huh?
Take the bait. War of attrition. These are not terms usually heard with
Not
volunteerism and civic
no
duty
no
and
no
things
no.
like that.
Yeah,
Yes, Brad's going to be the new secretary.
yeah,
Perfect.
I can't start today, but yeah, let's think, and I will be able to do everything. Next meeting I'll be up and running. I'll be
Terrific.
ready for that.
Thank you for that. All you have to do is look through previous meeting notes or
Mhm.
meeting minutes, and you'll see like it is really just a sort of a bullet point style list of the things that were discussed. Was this discussed? Time started, time finished, who
Okay.
attended, super logistical black and white kind of thing, but but very important, just
Yeah.
because as everybody knows, we're running this committee, trying to run it, or I shouldn't say trying, we're running this committee as much to the letter of the rules and regulations as we possibly can. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. Number 5. So we're in December now. We're coming up on our 2-year birthday for the group. One of the things that I wanted to put out there right now is, and we really I'm trying to think of the best way to put this so that we don't go too much longer. Meeting dates and times. We as a group can decide that every fourth Thursday at 7 p.m. is not the best time for us to be having this meeting. We can move it to 6 on a Tuesday or whatever. But I want to broach that subject with the group so that we can talk about, is this the best time? Obviously there's no perfect time, but is this, all things considered, the best time, or is there a time and a date that everybody would like to lock in on for 2024? I myself am ambivalent. I'll make whatever the date works. I've done these last month. I did this call from Disney World, so I'll do whatever. Jess, I know you've done calls from time zones on the opposite side of the world before. Like, I don't care what time and date this ends up being, but I wanted to put it out to everyone so that we could hopefully, just bolster the group's chances of having as full of an attendance as possible in 2024. So does anybody have any thoughts on the date and or the time that these meetings are held at?
I think it's a good day and time, so I'm fine with it if everyone else is.
Same here.
I'll third that.
then we'll keep it. I figured I'd put it out there to everybody. And if somebody does decide, hey, by all means, like, we're flexible. If we do happen to change the day and time, if we do happen to need to, I just want to know if we're going to be doing it for the rest of the year so that we can get that change posted. Otherwise, if we do need to change, like on an ad hoc basis, because of, like, say last month where the meeting was held the meeting would have hit on Thanksgiving or something like that. That's one thing which we obviously need to deal with in a certain way, but there's another if we wanted to change it across the board. So if anybody does want to reconsider that, please let me know, and we can certainly reconsider it as a group and lock it in. Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna make 2 notes here. No change. Agenda item number 6 is quarterly initiatives for 2024. At about this time last year, I floated this idea of putting in front of the select board on a quarterly basis initiatives. And we weren't really able to do that on an official level because of our challenges with reaching a quorum for the most part. That said, Jessica has been telling me how important grants are from any number of reasons, both from the standpoint of, hey, now's time, there's grants coming. We get information from Locomotion all the time about certain grants that are coming in, as well as from some of the other organizations that we work in partnership with, or that have outreach to us. We should think about initiatives equaling grants. The town's got a grant writer now. We should think in terms of, I think, as a lot of people are, putting that grant writer to use. So I think being conservative I'm trying to be conservative / realistic and say, continue going down the road of trying to put in front of the select board quarterly grants. But I wanted to get that out there right now. Jessica.
I was just wondering if we could make an appointment to meet with the town grant writer, just so that we could talk about the types of things that we're looking for. And I know that VTrans has a number of grant opportunities for, like, the flashing beacon lights and, other sort of signage. I don't think that the beacons require a town match. And so if the town's already going to be budgeting for Pine Street and a new sidewalk, it might not be so important for us to, like, figure out what we need to ask for in the budget for this year. But if we could meet with the grants writer fairly soon, like maybe February, maybe we would then be able to see, like, what the schedule for the different grants were, and that would help us organize our work.
Sorry, I'm just typing all that up.
Brad's
Gang,
laughing, not him.
Gang, we've discussed grants previously. We've discussed the beacons, the assisted crosswalks. Does anybody have any thoughts on grants? Either some of the historical ideas we've had. I'll go back through the meeting notes and some of the other things that we've discussed grants in the context of, and maybe see if we can get some documentation on those ideas. I know informally we've discussed on these calls everything from the assisted crosswalks, other streets to identify for advisory lanes, the airport road thing, any number of things that we've thrown out there. It would be great if and Jessica said something to me via email a week or so ago, that if you attach something, or if you go to the select board with an idea that's pushed through the lens of a grant, the select board is typically very warm to those ideas. That it isn't simply somebody coming and saying, town got to do this and whatever. If it comes through the guise under the guise of, hey, I think we should write a grant for this, because, and Brad, I know Jessica knows this, but Brad, just, you might not know this, and as a reminder to the rest of the group, we as an organization cannot go and write a grant on behalf of the town without the town's approval. So we have to go and say to the select board, hey, we think this would be a good grant to go for. And they say, that sounds great. You've got our blessing, you've got our approval. Now we've got this amazing piece of the puzzle in that we've got a town grant writer that can actually help us finish out that process. We don't have to go and necessarily do it and feel our way through that process anymore, which is what we were up till a few months ago. That's kind of what we were staring down the barrel of doing. But that's basically the kind of the historical perspective on that, is that we can't go and just ask for grants on behalf of the town without the select board saying yes. But as Jessica pointed out to me, when you ask the town, hey, can we go and do this grant? They're like, of course, go. I shouldn't say of course, but they're typically very amenable to going for grants. So anyway, that's what I wanted to just discuss as far as quarterly initiatives are concerned. Jessica, I've got a note in the meeting minutes I'll reach out to Valerie and ask her about what it would take to get a meeting with the town grant writer. And if anybody wants to, we'll just discuss offline who wants to join that meeting. I don't think we should wait until the next meeting to necessarily have that introduction if we can. In the meantime, again, keep thinking about things that we might want to write grants for, or that we want to / put in front of the select board as things to consider, both within, as a big reminder, both within the village as well as in the town at large. I know the town at large, they're looking at, it was nice to see in some of the recent back and forth that they're looking at the parks, the ones down on the river and things like that, as areas for improvement and things like that. So that should serve as a reminder to us as a group that a lot of what we're trying to do is not limited to the village police district. So, Jessica, is there, rather than push this into other business, is there anything you want to speak on? I know we had Valerie here speaking about where we were at in the overall budgeting process, but you had reached out to me a couple times about just getting something in front of the select board, even if it's a dollar amount that then has line items that come in the wake of it, or get in front with a line item and then, either lead or follows.
Right.
Is there anything noting that we're getting into budgeting? Jessica, is there anything you want to talk to the group about relative to how you feel, like what you feel our next move should be relative to any asks like that?
Yeah, my concern was just that if we didn't ask for money in the budget to be set aside for like signage or line painting or something like that, if you get a grant and it requires matching funds, they just might not have it, right? And so then they can say like, no, we're not going to apply for that grant. Given what Valerie has been saying this year, though, about taking care of Pine Street and doing the sidewalk, and that's already in the budget, I don't think it's so urgent that we ask for money this year. I think if we talk to the grants writer and we can develop a priority list and get some dollar figures, then we can ask for that in the next budget. So I think we're okay for this year, which is good because, as Valerie was saying, like they're doing it now, so we'd have to move pretty fast. But it sounds like we're okay this year with the budget, but we should prepare so that by like November next year, that if we need to ask for money, that we would be able to ask for that.
Jessica, in your experience, both as an observer and a participant in a lot of the select board meetings and calls, when people go to the select board with these types of asks, how comprehensive are the asks? How much documentation typically comes with them? What should we be getting our heads around as far as if we do come with something? What should we be coming with, understanding that putting our best foot forward, there's kind of a baseline or a table stakes level of that, but what have you typically seen before?
I mean, I've seen a pretty wide range, and we have Jim on the call too, so he might want to speak to that. But there's been a wide range from what I've seen for the grant applications, where some people basically just say, this is what we're going to apply for, and the town doesn't have a match. And so as long as there isn't a matching amount and the town doesn't really need to do anything, a lot of the time they're okay with less documentation. If it's going to be like, if we're building something or we're altering something, then obviously they would want more documentation about that. And if we're going to ask for money in the budget, like if there's a matching component, so let's say that the project's like $200,000 and the grant covers 175,000, so the town would need 25,000. Then they're going to want to see a lot of documentation. But Valerie, she maintains all of those files, so I'm sure she could give us an example of like a good model that she thought that we could use. But that's my sense, is that there's a pretty wide range, but the more money you want or the bigger the project, probably the more documentation you should have.
Got it. I know one of the big things that we've been discussing, which is 2 more assisted crosswalks, 2 more beacon crosswalks. Thankfully, as our sort of our select board sponsor, we have Ian, who was the person who got the first of those crosswalks installed. So and he's obviously offered to help us out if and when we've identified, which I think we know that at least the 2 spots that we're looking for, he's got the boilerplate kind of in place for how at least for documentation around where you locate them, how you ask for it and all that, because he's actually been successful at doing that in his previous pre-select board life.
Right. And those grants don't require a match. So we could go forth with that. We would just need select board approval as far as the placement of them.
Yeah.
But those grants, they covered the entire cost of it.
Awesome. And I remember Ian mentioning the actual cost of them, and it seemed amazingly affordable relative to what you'd typically think of a civil works public works project like that would be. So okay, so thank you for that. On to other business. I actually think we've covered everything that I had sort of in the parking lot from last meeting. I still have some leftover action items, and when I was reviewing the actual recording of last month's call, I noted a couple things in there that I had not in the past month followed up on, so I'm going to do that shortly here. But we've covered basically everything that I thought we'd be pushing into other business. Jessica's notes on budgeting and grant writing, some of what Valerie spoke to as far as some of the process-oriented things of that nature. We've got our secretary in place now. I don't think I have any other business that's hanging out there. Does anybody else, before we sign off for tonight, have anything either big or process oriented or small or anything like that? Noting that, I know a big one. I had in the meeting last month, I had actually noted that I wanted to be more ahead on agendas. With the holiday, I ended up being behind on it. I lost a day because I thought that a Tuesday was a Monday and a Wednesday was a Tuesday and things like that. So I actually ended up being behind on where I was on the agenda. Hence, you all getting it when you got it. Moving forward, I want to be a week ahead so that everybody can get in formally what they want as agenda items. Jessica.
I was just going to point out that on the agenda list for new business for the new year, they have the changing the speed limit inside the village on like things to possibly schedule for next year. So I just wanted to remind you that that's on Valerie and Sharon's list.
Okay, that'll be an easy subject for us to pull up all of our considerable notes and time and support that our organization has put towards it. A lot of those, it's interesting. Ian used to attend these meetings, relatively regularly, so we've had a lot of active conversations amongst the group in these calls on the 25 mile an hour speed limit. We're all, at least anybody, I know Dustin and Tanya and myself are well versed in the trials and tribulations of it. One of the things that I have as a note to ask about, because even Ian was not 100% sure on this. There's a lot of conjecture on and I think some of this comes from Chief Nason, on the legalities of changing the 25 mile an hour, the 30 mile an hour speed limit, and how it won't stick for 5 years or something like that. It was a bizarre set of circumstances that every time I heard it, I was like, that can't, knowing Vermont DOT, that can't be how that law is written. So, so that's good to know. Do you know, do you have any idea when they were going to discuss that? It was in their next meeting?
No, it was just at the end of the town notes saying, you know, and for next year, we're going to do all these different things. There's
Yeah.
like 10 things on that list. And so it's one of the items on that.
Got it. Okay. I'm just making a note on that. Okay. Anything else, everyone? Can I get a motion? Oh, so thank you, everybody, we went a full hour tonight. I appreciate everybody showing up. Brad, thanks for volunteering. We'll try to make this as painless on you as possible, and more importantly, though, know that you are doing your part to keep us to keep the actions of the committee above board. Does anybody have anything else before we sign off? I hope the holidays are going well for all of you. New Year's coming up. I will send, I'm gonna send an email with all the links to things. I buried them all in the meeting minutes, so they're there to access, but we've got even more. All right, and I'll find a way to forward all that, and because I've got to send it to Valerie anyway, so I'll copy everybody on that email. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, everybody. Jim, thanks for joining us tonight. At 8:03, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.